Welcome into Giants Training Camp Report presented by Citizen. A hot, humid day out here in East Rutherford as the Giants take the practice field to prepare for their very first preseason game Thursday against the New England Patriots. My name is Madelyn, Burke, joined here by Super Bowl champion Shaun O'Hara. First, before we get started, got to wish a very happy birthday to Xavier McKinney. Today is his birthday. Got to show some love out there to X.
Yeah.
But Shaun,
happy birthday, X-Man.
Right, Shaun, first preseason game just a couple of days away. We see the intensity on this practice field behind us. These guys are ready to get and play somebody else.
Yeah, no doubt. At this point in time, obviously when things get hot outside, the temperatures start to flare. But also, you've been practicing against the same guys now for a couple of weeks. They had the scrimmage on Friday night here in the stadium. There was a lot of energy, but everybody was excited to have that, that game day feel like. So now are the dog days of camp. It's, as you're prepping for a preseason game and it's getting a little bit hotter and everybody's sore, and you know what? The things that didn't bother you the first couple of days of practice, like when defensive guys are trying to rip the ball out and they push you to the ground, now all of a sudden that bothers you and it gets you upset. So it's good to see the guys still staying competitive. But you mentioned the preseason game. This is exciting as players as you start to think about other opponents and you start to talk about different defensive schemes, and the defense has to start looking at different formations, and maybe you start game planning a little bit. So with only 3 preseason games now, they matter a little bit more than the previous years when you had 4. But no doubt you're excited to see another jersey, hit another color, hit somebody else from another team.
Right, because the Giants have been going pretty much thud tempo with pads on, and you got to hold yourself back, because as much as you want to practice and execute, you also don't want to injure your teammates. You want to be able to go into week 1 healthy. Head coach Brian Daboll was talking about what to expect from today's practice, saying, in large part, one thing they're going to be doing, executing a carded practice, not so much schematically planning for the Patriots, because again, this is a preseason game, but executing more about what they want to do out here today.
Yeah, and you can see right now, the defense, they're holding up cards right now. So this is the offense, the number 1 offense going against what they expect to be the Patriots defense. They're holding up the cards. There's Shane Lemieux in the left guard, Andrew Thomas at left tackle, Feliciano in at center, Glowinski at right guard, and Evan Neal at right tackle. And New England obviously is going to have, different fronts, different schemes, different defensive alignments. So now you're kind of getting used to their front. Maybe it's a little more 3-4. So on first and second down, those base defenses and personnels are different than they are on third down when maybe you get an even front. So these are all things that you're trying to work on right now, and you can see the tempo is a much different pace.
So for viewers at home who didn't play the game, who are watching this and say, okay, what does it actually mean? What's on these cards? How do you explain to them the importance of that and how that factors into a game day?
Yeah, as we see Saquon Barkley right there with a nice little run. I think one of the things that you look at defensively is what is their base defense? And base defense is what they run on first and second down typically. The Patriots have been a 3-4 defensive scheme, and then they like to change it up on third down. They bring in a fast rusher, and they'll have more of a 4-down look, and sometimes they'll have one of those guys walking around to try to confuse you. So if your defense is more of a 4-3 defense, traditionally, that's what you've been seeing all through training camp. The 3-4 defense can create different challenges with protections, with run blocking assignments. So those are the things that you want to iron out, because the defense looks different when you only have 3 down linemen and you have 4 guys standing up. You've got to identify different linebackers. So that's what they're going through right now, and different plays. Look, you've been blocking them against your defense for 2 weeks now, so you feel comfortable about that play when it's called in the huddle. You know how to block it against the defensive fronts. And all of a sudden now you see a different defensive front, and it changes things. So you can see right there, that was a good tempo drill right there. That's Richie James with that catch, and you could see the defender was running with him and shadowing him kind of in his hip pocket, and then once he saw the ball was being thrown, he kind of laid off and let him catch the ball, not trying to battle for the ball in this drill. Give them a good look, let them work on their footwork and their route and the timing, but no contested balls here in this drill. This is kind of how you build some of that confidence and get some of those mental reps.
And to that point, though, how important is it? Because in years past, too, we've seen September can be a little bit clumsy for some teams. So getting these preseason reps for everyone from the starters to the guys trying to get a spot on the roster, how important is that, especially under a new offense and a new system?
Yeah, I think for both sides of the ball. Look, I mean, the defense is trying to wrap their head around Wink Martindale's defense as well. So I think there's the first preseason game is really all about, look, let's just go out and play. Let's not try to create too many things for them to think about. We want them to just go out. It's the first game action. We want running backs to get tackled. We want our defensive players to practice tackling. We want to practice getting the ball out, practice holding on to the ball. So all of those basics, the blocking, the throwing, the catching, that's what you really want to focus on. It's not so much of a game plan and scheme-wise. We're going to play basic elementary plays. We want to see you execute. We want to see you compete. So I think that's the big part of it. And for a lot of veteran players, a lot of them, it's, hey, knocking off some rust. I remember back when I was playing that first preseason game, it was usually about 15 plays, depending on how it was going to go. But it was just to kind of get that game speed rust off. Game speed is it's an extra notch. It's another level of intensity. So you've got to get that kind of rust off, get you back in the groove a little bit, but just to kind of build the confidence. So that's what veterans want to do. Guys like this, Wan'dale Robinson, for him, it's, look, you're excited. It's your very first game. You've dreamt of this moment your entire life, getting to suit up and play in an NFL game. And yes, it's preseason, but you get excited. You've got to temper all of that. You got to find a way to control your emotions, your adrenaline, all that, and lock in and focus and do your job. So I think we saw them scrimmage in MetLife Stadium, and they got to go through the pregame routine. But, look, the game routine is different, when it's a real game. So for all these guys, all of those things are big learning aspects for the young players. And then, the exciting part is you get to go out and compete. You get to go out and play against another team, and you get to tackle. It's live. It doesn't count, but it does matter.
And as we take a look at threes here, taking some reps, 61 is an interesting story as well. Roy Mbedeka, he's only been in football pads 4 times, and Thursday will be his very first football action. He's coming over from Nigeria. He's new to this game, but has some incredible athleticism. There's a lot of storylines on this team, and as you're building an offensive line unit, you're coming together with a lot of people, a lot of stories, but this has been a point of emphasis for this Giants team for a while. What do you need to see from this group, especially in these early preseason games, to have some sort of a confidence?
Well, for this offensive line, I think, and really offense as a whole, it's, don't beat yourself. And I think early on in training camp, obviously that's the big focus is no mental errors. We can't beat ourselves. But I think when you look at the Giants offense last year and the last couple of years, it felt like they would always do something. And there was a holding penalty or a false start or, a miscue. It's hard to win games in the NFL. And in order to win a football game in the NFL, you have to first not lose it. So I think at a macro level, it's, don't beat yourself. They should be able to put up on a board every single day in practice how many mental errors you had in practice, and that should be diminishing as training camp goes along. And in a preseason game, it should be 0. Now, it does happen, but so the mental aspect of it is huge. And then I think for this offensive line, it's, how physical can you be? And sometimes the game situation can dictate that. If you're passing the ball a lot more than you're running it, you don't have as many opportunities. But when you do get those opportunities, it's up to those guys right there to set the tempo. Mark Lewinsky, John Feliciano, Evan Neal, Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux. It's up to them to set the tempo, set the bar, set the intensity level for here's how we're going to play. And once that standard is set, you've got to live up to it. So I think it's a mindset. It's a culture. It's something that it doesn't just show up on game day. It's something you've got to really work at. You've got to focus on. And we've seen them this week, Madelyn, work on some conditioning. They've been running in between some plays. They would go run, do a little conditioning, and then come back and do some red zone drills and run some plays.
Not just a little run. They have to sprint 80 yards, do red zone play, sprint 80 yards to the next red zone, and then run another play. I mean, as a player, that is important because, in the fourth quarter, you have to be able to execute while you're exhausted.
Yeah.
But that can't be fun in this heat.
No, it's one of those things where you hate doing it while you're doing it, but you appreciate it later on. It's kind of like when your parents, when your mom's always making you a lunch. You don't appreciate it when she's doing it, but then when she's not there to make it for you, you kind of wish you had it.
Yeah.
I think that conditioning though is good because, when you're tired, that's when your fundamentals get sloppy. That's when your mind gets sloppy, and so you have to function when you're tired. I like that conditioning aspect of it, and then going back and doing plays. I equate it to like basketball. When I used to do conditioning, get tired, and then you had to go to the free throw line and make free throws. And when you're in the red zone, as we see Darius Slayton with a nice catch right there over the breadbasket. Nice throw there. I think was that Tyrod? that type of stuff, when you get the red zone, should be like a free throw. You should get points. Like whether it's a field goal or a touchdown, you hope that you make both free throws when you get to the line. You definitely got to go 1 for 2. You can't go 0 for 2. So shooting free throws when you're tired is a big part of it. Playing football when you're tired is a big part of your preparation.
Now, as we see these guys out here on the field, the Giants did release their first unofficial depth chart of training camp. As a player, how much attention do you guys pay to that at this point in the season? And what does that mean to you when these things come out?
Yeah, I think depth charts at this point in time are just so they know who's in the game next. I think one of the things with preseason games, we were talking about points of emphasis. Substitution is a huge part of this. And special teams always ends up being kind of the big puzzle because inevitably somebody will go down with a cramp or something happens. And now, the guy who thought he was on the third team punt team now is elevated with the ones because somebody else got moved over. So there's constant communication with that. And I think depth charts, look, they serve a purpose. And at this point in camp, the purpose is really to decide who's going to be in what group and how many snaps you're going to get in the game. By no means does it necessarily, mean that you're the starter for the whole season or that you're not going to make the team if you're on the third string. I started out as an undrafted free agent. I was third string center. So, you never know what could happen. You always have to be ready. But in the first preseason game, you never know how that game's going to shape up. And you just have to be prepared to maximize every single snap, maximize every opportunity. And I know,
right,
especially if you're in the third string, Madelyn, you don't know. You may get 6 reps. You may get 16. So you've got to maximize that. You can't have any mental errors if you only have 6 reps.
Got to make the most of your reps right here. As we see Adoree Jackson coming up with an interception. Wan'dale Robinson, the intended receiver. Mike Groh, the wide receivers coach earlier today, was talking about just what a professional Wan'dale Robinson is and just how inspiring it is to see him come in as a young rookie. Adoree Jackson, another guy, though, going into this season, he's one of the most veteran players in that defensive backs room, and he's really got to step into that role as well.
Yeah, Adoree Jackson's a pro, and look, he's locked down that starting corner spot, and he's been a phenomenal player whenever he's on the field. He just, the struggles he's had was he got injured a couple times, and he was injured in Tennessee and missed a little time with the knee. But certainly out there, he's got some skills. What we're seeing right now, for those of you watching at home, this is the offense now doing cards. If you're wondering why the receiver didn't compete for that ball and that interception, this is the defensive period now. You're going to see, I think that's Tony Sperano Jr., the assistant offensive line coach. He's talking to the players right now. They're holding up the cards right now. So the Giants now are running Patriots plays. We still don't know who the offensive coordinator is for the Patriots yet, but they're running their system and their scheme right now against our defense, so they get a look and a visualization of, all right, here's how they're going to line up, here's their formation. So that's why you didn't see the receiver fighting for the ball in that play. This is a defensive drill, so any pass that's being thrown, they're going to let the defense win. That's how Adoree was able to intercept that football.
Kenny Goliday as well talked about how he stayed local this offseason to really get some work in with Daniel Jones, and that chemistry building has got to be important for these two. Last year, obviously, Kenny wasn't happy with what he saw from himself. A lot of people would hoped for more from him in his first year. I think he's ready to show a little bit more this season, and building that chemistry and that consistency with the quarterback is important.
Yeah, well, it's important and it's necessary. And you know what? I think he should be disappointed. I think he's disappointed with how things went as a team last year, and also personally. If you're a receiver and you sign a big contract, you come to a team, you don't catch a single touchdown pass, like you're mad at yourself. You're not happy with where you're at. So I'm glad to know that he's putting in some extra work, because that relationship and that time with your quarterback, it's so crucial. It's crucial in every facet of the game. But I also think when you spend time with your quarterback, that trust factor starts to grow. And that, hey, look, I know I can trust you because I've worked with you enough. I know where you're going to be. I know on third down, if I'm coming to you, you're going to make a play. So those are things that look, they're both leaning on each other in that aspect. I think Kenny Goliday is, he's eager to prove that that he's worth the contract that he signed, and also eager to prove that he's the receiver that the Giants thought he was when they brought him here. So it takes two to tango. Obviously, Daniel Jones has got to stay on the field so they can have that rhythm, but no doubt in this offense he's going to have an opportunity to make some plays. So one of the keys defensively, whenever you're facing a new offense, is you've got to communicate. Obviously, when you're on the road, defensively, you're not really dealing with crowd noise. If you're at home, you've got to deal with the crowd noise and your fans getting loud on third down. So they work on hand signals and communication. If they come out in a 2-by-2 formation and then they motion a receiver, and now you end up with a trips formation on one side, that could completely change your coverage. And so the corners and the safeties, you'll see them pointing and talking throughout this anytime there's any motion. And there you can see right now there's hand signals going on right there, letting everybody know, hey, here's where we're at. We're in zone, we're in man, or it's cover 2, it's cover 3. The one thing you don't want to do in the preseason game, you don't want to have a busted coverage. You don't want to have safeties thinking that it was man and corners thinking that they had help over the top. That's how big plays happen, and everybody ends up walking to the sideline saying, where'd who go?
Right.
You don't want any of that going on. Certainly, it's no fun for the coaches when you come back to the sideline and they're trying to figure out, why they thought they had the perfect defensive coverage called and they had a receiver running free.
Well, and that's why communication is so important, and it's one of those words that we hear. It's like a bingo word. Communication, versatility. It's something you hear a lot at this time of year. But how do you instill that? How do you keep that going, especially when adversity hits? That's the important thing, right? Is building that trust with your teammates, building that communication, building that understanding of the way you see the game.
I think you got to lean on the veteran players, and so guys like Adoree Jackson, guys like Blake Martinez out there. I think Xavier McKinney, even though I could call him a younger player, he's in his 3rd year. He's got a veteran presence to him. I think same thing with Julian Love. So those veteran players have to really have a voice, and I think one of the toughest things for young players is to talk, because they're so unsure. And they don't want to say something and be wrong. And I think the challenge for young players is to communicate. Hey, say what you're thinking. Even if you're wrong, that's fine.
Sure.
But if you say it, now I know what you're thinking, and now I can get you in the right formation. I can get you in the right place, the right mindset, and we can make sure we're on the same page. If you don't say anything as a young player and you make a mistake, now I didn't know that you didn't know. So there's a little bit of that going on, and that goes on both sides of the football.
One thing I remember from early on in Saquon Barkley's career as well is he made the point that it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how much of a veteran you are, you can be a leader at a young age, at an older, and that's something too. It's like having that confidence in yourself, and to your point, having that confidence to say what you think or express it and have those conversations.
Yeah, I think leadership is different for every player. And, you can lead by example. You can be verbal. Some guys are comfortable in that. Some guys aren't. So a lot of it's by personality. But I think the biggest key to being a leader is, if you're team first.
And speaking of leadership, Tyrod Taylor right here, the number 2 quarterback, he talked about just preparing in the way every time that he is the starter. And he said, I have to prepare as though I'm a starter, because that's how I gain the respect and the trust from my teammates. Yesterday, Brian Dable put him in for 1 rep with the ones because he said, I had to talk to Daniel Jones about something. I didn't want to hold up practice. But he said he also got advice from another coach saying, this is something good to do, because that's how it happens for a backup quarterback. They get put into a game in a moment that they're not expecting to go. So if you have those moments in practice where they're not expecting to go in, but hey, I need you to go in and run this play, that's a good exercise as well.
Yeah, it's great practice and a great opportunity to show that, hey, look, I can step in at any moment, and the offense doesn't miss a beat. That's your job as the backup quarterback. Tyrod Taylor knows that. It is a tough job because, you don't always get notice. You don't get 2 weeks notice. You don't get 2 hours notice, and look, Tyrod knows that better than anybody. That's the life of a backup quarterback. You've always got to be getting mental reps. You may not get as many physical reps as you would like, but you've got to mentally stay sharp and stay on top of things. So he's a true pro in that sense, and I'm sure Brian Dable's comfortable in doing that, but you also, you want to make sure that, hey, you got to be ready, and sometimes springing something like that on a player, it's good. It's good to see how they respond. And it's good to keep them on their toes a little bit so that they're always prepping and being ready.
This is really kind of a jog through pace. This is their last practice before the preseason game and just about getting back to the script.
Yeah, looking at the schedule, so the game's Thursday night. Tomorrow, Wednesday, they will have probably a little walkthrough. They'll work on some substitutions, especially on special teams. That's a big factor. But for today, you mentioned that they're in shells right now. You want to get the legs back. They had a big work day yesterday. They got after it. It was hot. They did a lot of good situations, got a lot of good physical play yesterday. Now today is more about the mental stuff. As you bring out the cards, you don't want guys getting banged up and falling down when they're running other teams' plays. So that's a big part of it. As they get ready to prep up, they'll do a walkthrough tomorrow, polish some things up, and then it's game time.
game time. We know that the competitive juices are flowing on the practice field. They are ready to get out there. What is one point of emphasis that you want to see from this Giants team as they face their first opponent of the preseason?
Yeah, I think two things that I want to see offensively are just ball security, take care of the football, and then I want to see them finish drives. That's been really our Achilles heel as an offense for the Giants. Down in the red zone, look, it's great to move the football in between the 20s, but when you get down in the red zone, you have to finish. You can't always settle for field goals. So those are two things offensively. Defensively, the one thing when you're playing the Patriots is you're gonna get a good test in the run game. They do a great job with their concepts. They've always done a great job executing their techniques. So this will be a great challenge for the defense to work on stopping the run. And then, of course, you've got a young quarterback in Mac Jones. So no doubt I'm looking forward to seeing this defense apply a little pressure. I'm sure we'll see a couple of wrinkles in there. Wink Martindale knows the Patriots very well from his time in Baltimore. So I'm looking forward to some pressure on the quarterback from this Giants defense.
We know Wink Martindale loves to put pressure on the quarterback. We've seen this Giants put a lot of red zone situational out there on that practice field. We'll see how it translates to the very first preseason game Thursday. That's a wrap for us today from practice. For Shaun O'Hara, I'm Madelyn Burke. Thanks for hanging out with us on Giants Training Camp Report presented by Citizen. We'll see you next time.